Hey, it's Ramsey Dewey over here in Shanghai, China. Welcome to another edition of Q&A with the Coach. Today we have a question from DK Mia. Maybe. He says, Ramsey, do you have videos on fighting stances? I saw you comment on them and their history, but never on different stances you yourself use and teach your students. For example, horse stance, Muay Thai stance, MMA stance, mixing up stances. Well, let's talk about stances today. And in order to do that, I'm gonna have to actually stand up. Ha! 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 Oh, so you asked about the horse stance. When would I teach this? I suppose if I was teaching a traditional martial arts class, I might teach the horse stance. But for actual MMA fighting, no. So you mentioned Muay Thai stance and MMA stance and mixed stances. There's no MMA stance. There's not. In mixed martial arts, you will be constantly changing stances and positions for all kinds of different reasons, as your opponent also changes stances and positions for all kinds of different reasons. Okay, as far as Muay Thai, there are a bunch of different styles of Muay Thai. Did you know that? Muay Thai just means Thai martial arts, but generally speaking, what we tend to see is a high guard, hands out in front, shoulders slightly raised, and a weight distribution, something like this, with a little bit more weight in the back than the front, but that can quickly be adjusted by shifting the weight like so, which makes it easy to shift the weight to the back leg in order to throw a push kick with the lead very quickly as a counter strike, to commit our weight forward under the lead leg, to drive a right hand, a right elbow, etc., or commit the weight to a lead elbow, a jab, a hook, etc. This stance also allows us to quickly shift our weight for clinch fighting, knees, etc. So it's a pretty well-balanced stance. But if you fight like this in an MMA fight, people will shoot under your guard pretty quickly. Since you're up nice and high, they'll get to your hips very easily and they will put you on your back. So you might notice MMA fighters tend to fight with a little bit wider stance and a little bit lower, and also tend to bring the lead arm lower. Maybe even the lead arm down completely. Lead shoulder up, but lead arm down. Why? To stop that shot and get an underhook. When the other guy comes in close and tries to grab something, that low lead arm can very quickly turn into an underhook, which is much more important in mixed martial arts than keeping your hands up. This is something a lot of people don't really understand about the guard. They assume that you need to go into a fight walking around like this all the time, otherwise you're doing it wrong, and that's absolutely false, especially in MMA. If you have your guard up like this, the big problem with that is everything's open down here. Your opponent's going to shoot under you, get his shoulders on your hips, and put you on the mat. He's going to take you down very easily once you've locked yourself into this position. So again, if I'm going to talk about an MMA stance, generally speaking, the feet are going to be a little bit wider, the feet are going to be a little bit flatter, the stance is going to be a little bit lower, so I can sprawl, so I can shoot, so I can level change, and still commit power and efficacy and speed to my strikes. Now, we can break this down further into other stances. Right now, I got a forward stance where the weight is committed mostly to my lead leg. You'll see some boxers who use this stance really well. Jack Dempsey, Mike Tyson, this offensive forward stance. And we see some MMA fighters use this as well. Dominic Cruz, great example, with his weight forward. But then we got some guys who like to turn into a bladed side stance. And you have to keep in mind, in MMA, you can't be married to any of these positions. So you're going to constantly be switching from a forward offensive stance, a side stance, a high guard, Muay Thai type of stance, back to that forward stance, right? And the arms are going to be in different positions for different reasons. Long guard, high guard, low guard, Philly shell. And all of these have different applications. Maybe I'll show you some sparring footage where I've used positions like this. So I would use a side stance. This has pros and it has cons. One of the big cons is leg kicks. Man, do you see when Michael Venom Page got, leg kicked and then knocked out? Because he's just absolutely married to that side stance, which has worked out really well for him. He can move really fast in that position. But when you get caught in that position, boom, it's virtually impossible to check a kick from there, so you're entirely reliant on your footwork. And there's a very simple solution. When you get into a certain range, change your stance. When you get out of a certain range, you can go back here. Now, changing stances can be very, very subtle, and sometimes you might not even notice it. For example, I can go from a Muay Thai type of stance with this high guard to very quickly moving to a side stance for a side kick. Did you even see what happened right there? I shifted my hips. Now I'm in a side stance. I rotated this chamber, boom, right? And we can do the same thing for a back kick. I'm in this Muay Thai stance, most of the weight on the back, but I can very quickly shift my weight to the front. And then what do? Hop! And now I've got a back kick. And I had to turn to a side stance and then a back stance in order to do that. Did you know there's a back stance where you essentially take that lead foot and turn it around? So I'm going from a more traditional Muay Thai stance or an English boxing stance where I have my foot raised to take a nice trigger step right there. Turn my lead foot around, a little heavier on the back, and now I can drop here into a back kick. Or I can go from one of these Muay Thai type of stances or an English boxing type of stance or a karate stance, and then very quickly, side kick, back kick. Or very quickly, spinning hook kick, right? So just to do those basic Taekwondo moves, you've got to be able to adjust your stance from this classical Muay Thai type of thing to a bladed stance and back again. And then when someone shoots on you, low lead arm, we're ready to pummel, we're ready to sprawl, and we're ready to wrestle. So once again, in mixed martial arts, if you're married to a specific stance, you're going to limit yourself quite a lot. Thanks for watching. Now get out there and train.
If you like the gear I use in my videos, find it at xmartial.com. xmartial.com for rash guards, spats, shorts, and more. At xmartial.com, you'll find a wide variety of clothing designs and sport-specific training equipment for mixed martial arts, no-gi Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, boxing, wrestling, and Muay Thai. So, go check out our friends at xmartial.com, and don't forget to use my code Ramsey10 for 10% off everything on the website. It helps out this channel a lot. Thanks again.